Hi everyone, and welcome to the first Imagine Cup Junior webinar. My name is Corey, and with me today I have Amanda.
Hi guys.
We also have the rest of our team. So we have Neve, Kaylin and Richard in the background to answer any questions that you might have. So you might be at home wondering, well, what is this webinar going to entail over the next few weeks? So the purpose of Imagine Cup Junior and this webinar is to bring together students from across Ireland, so students like yourselves, to help resolve some of the world's toughest challenges using AI for good. So during the next few weeks, we hope that you are going to learn more about technology and how it can be used to positively change the world. Okay, but this is a competition and it's a global competition and we're going to be judging it locally here in Ireland. So there will be prizes. Woo! You can enter on your own or you can enter as part of a team. So a team, it can't consist of more than 6 people. Okay. And we will be discussing this project and what it involves in more depth at the end of this webinar and in the coming weeks. But all you need to know for now is that it is a competition, there is a prize, and there is a deadline. And the deadline is June 12th. So what are we going to be covering today? Well, we are going to be covering the fundamentals of AI. And you're probably wondering, what does that even mean? Okay, so the fundamentals of AI are basically just the basics of AI. So let's have a look at what AI actually is, okay? And AI stands for artificial intelligence. And basically, it's when we make a computer or a robot or software think and act like a human, which is mad. And the thing about AI is that it learns from us, okay? But it's also able to learn from their own mistakes. AI is constantly learning. Okay, and AI has been an important part of our lives, whether we've realized it or not. So, Amanda, can you think of any AI that you use?
Yeah, so I think when we start thinking about AI, a lot of people automatically think of robots. I think it's like the first thing anytime we discuss this, even in DreamSpace, it's robots and it's this. But for me, it's ways when, for example, if something isn't working for me and I go onto a website and a little chat window pops up saying, can I help you? That's normally a bot or a chat bot, and that's normally AI. It's not a person behind the chat. It's actually the software has been programmed to ask questions and figure out the answers that come back in from the user. So that's fascinating. And I suppose when we ask students, normally the first thing is a voice assistant. So, something like Cortana or Siri, and we'll talk about them later. So they're really big. And then I'd say then probably the second most popular answer in DreamSpace is gaming. So a lot of people know that when they're playing a game, it could be actually an AI agent that they're playing against. So lots of different examples, and as Corey said, across the weeks we'll delve into them more. What about yourself, Corey? What do you think of?
Yeah, that's actually a really good example because there when you said about the chatbot, I actually was on to a chatbot only about an hour ago because I hadn't got my delivery of my parcel. So when I went to contact them, I had to contact them through a chatbot, which is mad. But yeah, it just goes to show how we actually use AI in everyday life. But you might also use it so maybe when you're going to book a ticket online for a show or a concert, or when you're scrolling through your social networking, you're engaging with AI. Another really cool way that we use AI that we probably don't recognize is when we online shop, which I've been doing a lot of. So when we buy things online, you might see, recommended for you. So they're noticing the AI is noticing what you usually buy, and it's recommending other things for you to buy as well. So there's just some examples. And if you can think of any other examples that that you use every day, pop them over into the Q&A section because we'd absolutely love to hear them. So we talked about AI and artificial intelligence, but what is intelligence? Okay, and let's think about children for this example. So when we think about kids, we know that their intelligence is acquired through learning. So as a child grows up, they're learning from their parents, from their siblings and friends, and even actually society in general, to be honest. So while some of the learning is taught, okay, so while we're teaching some of the things to the children, they pick up other concepts by their observation. Okay, so if I asked you, Amanda, like, what do you think intelligence is? Or when I say what is intelligence, what's the first thing that comes into your mind?
I think I always think of learning new information and then I suppose using that information to make decisions and figure things out as I go.
Exactly. And intelligence is made up of exactly what Amanda said and a few more things. So, for example, we have reasoning, learning, problem solving, which is huge. We problem solve every single day, multiple times a day. We don't even realize we're doing it. Perception and linguistic intelligence. Okay. So, there's just kind of a synopsis of what AI is. But what is it made up of? Okay, so what actually makes AI? And generally, it's these three things: data, algorithms, and machine learning. Okay, so we're going to talk about data first, because it's actually very relevant to what's going on at the moment. So, take for example, what is data? So, all data is a collection of facts or numbers that we use for reference. Okay, so data is becoming more and more important all the time, but it is so important at the moment. Okay, so take this pandemic, for example. Data is helping the government make informed decisions. So they have the most up-to-date data, the most reliable data, and then they're able to inform the public on what is happening. Okay, and something to keep in mind is we always hear this word data, 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 but data is actually plural, because when we talk about data, we're usually talking about big data, like a lot of data. But if we're talking about just one piece of data, it's actually called a datum. Okay, which I think is actually very interesting because I had never heard that before. I just always reference data as data. So data is great, but it's not really useful unless we have somewhere to put it. That's where the cloud comes in. Okay, so you might hear people saying all the time, oh, the cloud, the cloud. But what actually is the cloud? So let's take a real life example, right? So let's think of a video streaming service. All right. So take a video streaming service, for example. What they will do is they will stream their data across the internet to your viewing device. Okay. They won't store it locally on like a DVD or a CD. Okay. All their data is up in the cloud. So let's have a look at a video streaming services data and let's just go through it. So here we have a video streaming service for user A, okay, we'll call them. And what's interesting here is I can see that they searched for certain words. So they searched for Julia, Downton, that was just their main screen. They searched for space and street. Okay, so after they searched for those words, these are the selections that they made. And if I look at them, I can probably tell, okay, yeah, they're very lighthearted, okay, and mostly actually now that I look at it, they're kind of off films, I think. Yeah, except for Poldark. So Poldark is the only TV series there. And what's interesting is, see the suggested match, and you might have seen this before. This is the data using an algorithm. So anything that user A is watching, there's an algorithm going on in the background, and we will talk a bit more about algorithms in a minute, to show whether it's a good match or not. Okay, so this person usually watches light-hearted films. So they're getting good matches on them. But what I think is super interesting is, see over here where it says finished. That user A, seems to have finished everything except the TV series. So what this says to me is user A isn't really a fan of TV series, but they will sit and watch a whole film. Okay, so let's have a look at another example. Let's have a look at user B. So Amanda, you go through this one here. See, what can you notice about it?
Yeah, so I suppose we can see again, similar to the last one, we can see our words searched and we can see that they've looked up. And I think as well, Cory, the first three there, Avengers, Daylight, I think they're films. And the algorithm seems to be telling this user that the match isn't great. It's only between the 50s and the 60s. Yeah. And it seems to be correct, because then if you look at finished, they actually never finished any of these films. But then when they seem to have looked up the words TV show and then watched a TV show, they seem to have watched a couple in a row on Sunday, a couple in a row on Monday. So actually, I think this is kind of like me. I'm not great at watching films. I'm a bit fidgety. I like moving around. So like TV shows are short and sweet and snappy, and I think that would probably be nearly, I'd nearly say this is nearly my data, but it would probably, yeah, it would tell me that user B, if I was this video service, that I would say their algorithm is going to tweak enough that user B keeps getting recommended TV shows as opposed to films, because that's obviously what user B enjoys.
That is so true, isn't it? I feel like this is my data as well, because I actually forgot that my video streaming service even had movies. I can't remember the last time I watched a movie. I just keep getting recommended TV shows because I absolutely love them. Okay, brilliant. So we had a look at data there, but let's have a look over algorithms now. And we did mention algorithms there. So what actually is an algorithm? Okay, well, all it is sometimes people are quite intimidated by the word algorithm, but it's just a formula or a plan. Okay, it's a step-by-step instruction to solve a problem. And you use algorithms every single day. Okay, not only in coding or in maths, but in real life. So like tying your shoe or making a cup of tea or making a ham and cheese toastie. They're all algorithms because they are you're following step-by-step instructions to get the desired outcome that you actually want. Okay. And within an algorithm, there is a process. So we have an input, we have the algorithm, and then we have the output. So for this example, I'm going to use maybe like a music streaming service. Okay, so the user engages with the service. That's the input. Okay, so the user, picks their favorite song, follows their favorite artist, and then an algorithm is working in the background to produce an output. So you might notice before, if you have any music streaming services, that it might say, oh, here's a recommended playlist, or here's your top songs of 2019, okay? That's because the algorithm is after being looking at the data that you've been inputting for the whole year, and its output then is that playlist that they've designed for you, which is super, super cool. So last part of our AI, so remember we had data, algorithms, and now we have machine learning. So machine learning can actually be, it can be quite heavy, and we are going to delve into machine learning even in more depth as the weeks go on. But I would have to say that machine learning is my favorite aspect of AI. It is so interesting when you get into it to actually see the process behind it. So what is machine learning? Okay, well, it's a part of AI, and we know that, but it enables machines to use an experience to improve tasks, okay? And it's usually based on the following steps. So we feed data into the algorithm, okay? And then we use that data to train a model. And then finally, we just test and deploy that model, okay? There is a fourth step though, and the fourth step is that we use that model to complete an automated or predictive task. Now, I know that's a lot and that's very heavy, okay? But what Amanda's going to do now in a minute is she's actually going to take you through a machine learning process. But what we're going to be using has already done step 1 and step 2 and step 3 for us. And Amanda is going to then use that model to do a task, okay? So over to you, Amanda, for you to show us the cool machine learning.
Perfect. Yeah, let's do it. Okay, thanks, Corey. So yeah, guys, there's a lot there. So people need to pause and just take a breath, even just to, we flew through some of the fundamentals there. So we're looking, as we said, we've seen that formula. So everything we now look at, that formula now entails, so the data, the algorithms, and let's dive into the machine learning piece as well now. We're also going to ask you to hop onto a new tab in your browser to look at some stuff that I'm going to show you as well. So again, you can pause this webinar when you're doing that. You can click on pause, have a little play around with what I'm showing you, and then come back and continue as I'll then walk through it myself. But sometimes it's nice to explore it yourself first before you hear me actually give you all the finer details, I suppose. So what we want to do, the best way for us to really understand AI is to dive into the applications in everyday life, because then we can really get a glimpse of, oh yeah, I've seen that in action, or I've actually used that. So that makes complete sense to me. So let's look at some of the applications in everyday life. What we're going to do is we're going to use our example in Microsoft, which is our cognitive services, they're called. And over the years, Microsoft has developed these out and grown them. And there's 5 kind of large categories, and each category has lots of options in it. But the 5 large categories are vision. Okay, so basically identifying things in an image. Okay, so if I look at content in an image and identify what's in it. Speech, so that's obviously self-explanatory. So looking at speech processing and also how you could use that in different services. Language, so being able to analyze text. Decisions, so being able to make really informed decisions based on the data that you've gathered. So getting your algorithms to work really well with the data and then informing decisions that you might make personally or as a business. And then search, so actually improving our performance searching the web. Now, for us, we don't have time. Over the weeks, we will delve probably into bits and pieces of these, but today we're going to delve into two. Okay, so we're going to look at vision and language, and they're the two kind of demos that we're going to do for this. Okay, so I'm gonna hop out of our slides, and I'm going to go into our browser, and I'm going to call it the web address, and we'll pop it into the Q&A as well. And if you want to pause and get yourself into that website before you hit play again, and I show you where we're going to go on the website, feel free to do that. Okay, so we're going to hop out. And I'm going to go into my browser, and the website we're going to is called aidemos.microsoft.com. So aidemos.microsoft.com, and we'll pop that in as an announcement as well so that people can see it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead to that website, and if you want to pause and kind of get yourself to the website and then play, and I'll show you what specifically we're looking at here. So this is self-explanatory in the sentence, AI demos. So being able to demo the AI technology that we use in Microsoft, okay, and that companies use with us. So we have a web page here, Hands-On with AI, and if I scroll down, there's actually lots of examples here. So later on, we're going to pick two in particular. I said there we're going to do vision and speech, but there's other examples here from our other services too, and you can actually play around with all of them if you want. But for today, just to kind of keep focused on two, we're gonna just do them on our live webinar. Okay, so the two we're looking at, we'll look at text analytics in a minute. That's one of them because that's our language example. But we're going to look at a vision example first. So computer vision is where we're going to begin. Okay, so if you want to go into computer vision on that page for me, click on pause in the webinar, have a little play around with what you're looking at, and because I'm going to go in now and explain it. So you might want to play with it first and see, can you figure it out before I actually tell you. So I'm going into computer vision. Okay, brilliant. This is pretty cool, Corey, isn't it? It's pretty cool stuff that we can play around with here.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
So you can see here, the first step here on my left-hand side is saying analyze and describe images. So basically what's going to happen is, if we think back to what Corey discussed already up to this point, you know, to get this to work, to get this AI experience we're about to show you to work, the computer had to be fed lots of data, so lots of images of lots of different things. And then the algorithms would have been tweaked and they would have improved and learned upon through the model that was developed. So they would have just really, really continuously fed this data with the algorithm and then trained this model to work. And what it's going to do when we click next step, when we've selected an image, is it's going to try and identify what is in that image. And it's not only going to tag it and say there's a car in the image, for example, it's going to tell us how confident it is in its decision. So it might not be, you know, it might not be that confident. And that's good for us to know as a user, to know that the AI isn't 100% sure here, or it's not even 70% sure. Okay, so that's useful for us to see. All right, so behind all of this, what we're about to use behind all of this has been a huge amount of work already done. Steps 1 to 3 on that last slide Corey did, basically feeding in the data into the algorithm, training the model and testing it before we get to this point now where we can actually use it ourselves. Okay, so I'm going to click on. This is what I'm talking about. The AI is after identifying different things. So a building, a car, a road, it's outdoors, all of these things in its image. Okay, and it's starting at the highest confidence and then it's making its way down to the lowest confidence it has in something. So it's not so confident, for example, that there's a sidewalk in the image. And actually, if you look at the image, why do you think that is, Corey?
Well, the sidewalk seems to be like quite far away, is it? Like I can't see it.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
The computer would be doing well.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose the car is probably blocking the sidewalk that will be here, we can assume. So actually, yeah, the sidewalk's all the way over there. So I think that's exactly what it is. Okay, so you can see that's why it's not so confident, whereas it's very confident there's a car. okay, because that's what it can see immediately. So that's really interesting. This data, this model has been fed and trained, okay, and now it's able to actually give us these really clear, concise answers about what is in the photo and how confident it is, okay. So that's just identifying objects. Let's try some text, which is really interesting, and these things can be used across lots of different applications then by different people and different companies, as well as Microsoft, when they have this kind of technology already developed. So let's try this one. It's kind of clear enough, really, isn't it? So 42 Street is in the image, and then there's 42 here. So actually the first thing I saw, Corey, when I did this was this one. And I remember reading the transcript and going, where's this other 42 come out of?
So did I.
Yeah, and it's actually because it's after finding that on the wall, right? So unreal. Okay, I'm fascinated by this stuff and it's so exciting. Okay, so that's deadly. Okay, let's try handwriting. So this is where our engineers blow me away, because handwriting is so different for everyone. So for them to have trained a model to understand handwriting would have taken so much data, so much work on their algorithms, so much training with machine learning. So the fact to have this working is, I can't emphasize how cool this is and how big a piece of work this would have been to get this to work. So let's jump into this one, for example. So cooked Alaskan king crab sections, blah, blah. So you can see it's literally pulled out every single word and letter that it's seen there. It's even pulled out the little hyphens, okay, yeah, which is interesting. Yeah. Whereas if we try, we'll just try another image real quick. And you guys might have played around hopefully with something else before you jumped in here with me. Let's try this one. So steel cut oats with apricots, cranberries, and spices. I'm actually kind of hungry, so that's really adding to my hunger right now. And you can see $4.50, and I think that's really interesting. It's even pulled out the dollar symbol there. Okay.
To even notice with the word width there, like you can barely see the H at the top, and it still was able to pick that up.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Okay, this stuff is really, really cool that they've got these models working so well. And last but not least, celebrities and landmarks. So if you think about it, celebrities, for example, their faces are very common. Okay, so there's images of celebrities all over the web. So actually to train the technology to recognize a celebrity isn't actually probably as difficult as maybe it would be to recognize someone like me. Okay, just an average Joe, okay? But so in this image here is Sachi Nadella, who's our Microsoft CEO, and there's tons of pictures of Sachi Nadella all over the internet. So there you can see they're 100% confident it's him, because the algorithm is perfect for him, because they know exactly, they've trained with so many images. Whereas if my image went in, as I said, probably wouldn't be so lucky. What about landmarks? Let's try this one, okay? So Statue of Liberty. It's making me want to go on holidays now. I know. So maybe sometime soon. So yeah, so you can see again, it's able to go, yeah, that is the Statue of Liberty. It's been trained to know what the Statue of Liberty looks like, probably from multiple different angles. If you think about it, it would need to know exactly from high, from low, from sides. And it's 96% confident. Okay, so unreal. So that's our vision one. So if you haven't tried it yourself yet, pause. Go off and try it yourself. Play around with that, okay? Select some of the images I didn't pick, see what it's telling you, and just remember that formula in your head as you do it. So it's data, it's algorithms, and it's been trained and it's learned what to recognize, okay? Because we're going to go back now and we're going to do another demo, a different demo, okay? So I'm going to go back to my aidemos.microsoft.com. I wish we could do them all, to be honest, because I love them. They're deadly. Okay. Right, and this time, everyone, we're going to go into text analytics. So again, if you want to pause before I go into it, please feel free, and I'm going to hop in now. Okay, so this one's a little bit, we have a little bit more freedom with this one, okay, because we can actually enter a message that we want to ourselves. So I'm going to go into step one here to enter a message, and what I'm going to say is we are so excited. What am I saying? That you can take part in our Microsoft competition. And we are sure Ireland are going to do great. Okay, so no typos, I'm good, I think. So we'll go next step. Let's see what happens with this text. Okay, so the first thing it's done is this step here, number 2. It's looked at sentiment and key phrases. So this is really interesting. Sentiment is basically used by lots of companies, and what they're trying to see is how positively do people talk about our company? Okay, is it with positive language? Is it with negative language? Is it just kind of neutral? Because that gives them a good idea of how they're viewed. Okay, so in this instance here, we've put in this text, and it's able to analyze how positive or what the sentiment is. And you can see down here the result is the sentiment is positive 94%. Corey, why do you think that is? Why do you think it thinks it's 94% positive?
Is it because you used words like excited and great?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're so excited and going to do great. So it is positive. It's a very positive, encouraging message, I suppose. So, and you can see the AI now has been trained to identify these kind of positive phrases and therefore give this result that we've seen at the end. So just to prove that, okay, I'm going to just quickly skip through these other steps because I'll come back and explain them the next time. I'm just going to start over. Just to prove that, I'm going to say Microsoft are hosting a competition and Irish students can enter. Okay, so it's very, very factual, I think. So let's just go with that one. Okay, so you can see there's a difference in the result. So it's neutral. So Corey, what's our thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it does seem quite neutral though, doesn't it? Like there's no real keywords there that are either negative or positive.
Exactly. So it's just going, you're bang down the middle. You're at that 50% mark. Okay. But just I just wanted to do the two examples just to show you it will adapt. Okay. It has been trained to analyze whatever text we put in there and it will adapt accordingly. So you can have a good bit of fun with this at home if you enter a few things and you can see how that will change. Okay. Next step, I'm just going to show you now the other things that will pick out from the text as well as sentiment. Is if we click next step, it's looking at entity linking. So what that means is there something that we've used in the text that literally has a bank of information on its own? So something like Microsoft, obviously Microsoft being a company, there's a huge amount of information on them in the web, and Irish as well. So if I click on Microsoft, for example, it brings me to the Wikipedia page of Microsoft because it's noticed that's actually something, that's an entity and there's lots of information on that in itself, okay? If we go down then to our final step, what it will do is it will then match up those entities to give us a little image card to link us to those things. So we have Microsoft, read the rest here, Irish country. What's interesting is this, look Corey, www.gov.ie, we used that, didn't we?
Yeah, that's where we got our data from for all the COVID-19 cases in Ireland.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see there, look, it's telling you, find out more information on these things here. So this model has been trained to really delve into the text, looking at things like sentiment, looking at things like entities and other links, fascinating stuff. So again, if you haven't played around, give a pause here before we jump back in and look at other things. So they're the two demos for today, but we will do other demos in our other lessons as well. Okay, so I'm going to hop back into my okay, so there are two. So vision and language, that's two, remember, out of the 5 categories that that we can look at. Okay, so let's have a look at where these actually occur. Okay, so we want to take 2 examples for you. Okay, we want to look at how do we use this AI in people's professional lives. So this AI, most people watching this are students, but family members or people you know who work in different types of businesses, they're all probably using some sort of AI, whether they're in health, whether they're in agriculture, retail, whatever they work in. AI is actually becoming a big part of all of these working everyday lives. So let's look at one way one business has used AI to work really well, okay? And what I might do is I'm just going to quickly just share this with you. So 1 second. Okay, so we're going to look at a video, and this is going to show us an example of AI being used by a company we work with called Uber, which some of you might have heard of. And what they've done is they've taken, out of those 5 categories, they've taken one part of our vision category that looks at people's faces, so uses facial recognition. And the reason they've done it is to increase security. I'll let the video tell the rest. So we'll discuss it a little bit more afterwards.
We come to work every day to pilot, test, and launch new technology solutions. RealTime ID Check is the latest technology example where we at Uber are constantly developing and testing new solutions to predict, prevent, and reduce security risks in ways that weren't possible before. It's through this partnership with Microsoft that we've been able to develop this technology quickly and ensure that every rider and every driver has an excellent experience. RealTime ID Check is a prompt that appears in the driver's app, asking them to take a self-photo. We can do a check in real time to make sure that that identity of the person who took the picture matches the account holder who's been approved to drive. Doing that serves a couple of purposes. Drivers know that their identities and their accounts are being protected, and riders know that the driver who they're with has been screened.
Jen?
Evan?
Yeah.
Real-time ID is a smart technology. What that means is it factors in and addresses the edge cases. The situation where the driver is wearing glasses or a hat and they weren't in the identification that we have on file. The beautiful thing is it can recognize these changes and ask the driver to remove their sunglasses or retake the photo. The partnership with Microsoft Cognitive Services allowed us to go from idea to execution to implementation across the country in a matter of months. Already, we've been able to make thousands of rides safer, and very soon we're going to be making millions of rides safer through this technology.
Okay, so you can see there, it's really interesting to see the way that this has been used by a company like Uber, but there's tons of companies like that that have seen one section of this AI technology and thought, wouldn't it be brilliant if we could use that to help improve our service? So they've seen actually this was an area where we needed a little bit more security. We needed to make sure the driver was who they said they were. And what better way to do it than your face, Corey?
Yeah, I know. What a good idea.
All right, so that you can literally just hold it up. I'm sure there's lots of other ways you've probably thought of even there that you could think of, and that's what we want you to do during this whole series. Every time we show you an example is think of the possibilities. That's why it's called the Imagine Cup Junior. It's to imagine what's possible with all this cool technology. Now, personally, I suppose when we think about using AI, we touched on this earlier. We talked about the idea of virtual agents, Corey, didn't we?
Yeah.
So what would you say what would you normally engage with a virtual agent? What would you talk to them about yourself?
Well, usually I'd say like set an alarm for or like, hey, make a list, and then I just start typing. It kind of just saves me the time because I know they're just doing it in the background then.
Exactly, yeah, I'm the same. I'm a big fan of the timer, so setting a timer for when I'm cooking something so that I don't burn the house down. So that's really important. So yeah, exactly. So these assistants can be really useful just to help us with queries, or even just with those other little tasks that it saves us having to actually go to a computer or pick up a phone or set a timer or whatever it is, because we can just give those instructions and they can assist us with it in our personal lives. But for some people, AI can really help them in their personal lives more than those little things, because we could do all those things ourselves, really. Okay, but we really want to give you your first glimpse now of AI for good, because that is actually what this whole Imagine Cup is about. So AI for Good has lots of different pillars, and I'll talk about this in a minute when we're talking about your project specifically. But one of the pillars is accessibility. So looking at how AI can actually assist people who have different types of disabilities. So we're going to focus on a specific one now called Seeing AI. This has been an app that's been consistently being developed. We have a whole research team in Microsoft that are able to work on all these amazing technologies and build them out. And Seeing AI can be an app on a phone, or in the example video I'm going to show you now with Saqib. He actually uses these smart glasses. And what it does is, remember, think back to our definition of AI. It's been trained, and remember, with all these data, its algorithms are working to identify different things around the person, because they can't see them very well, because they might have a visual impairment, and that could be a variety of degrees, but still it will give them that clarity that they don't maybe necessarily have. So it's much easier for Saqib to explain this, because this is someone who uses the app and has seen the power of it. So I'm going to show you this video.
I'm Sachi. I lost my sight when I was 7, and shortly after that I went to a school for the blind, and that's where I was introduced to talking computers, and that really opened up a whole new world of opportunities. I joined Microsoft 10 years ago as a software engineer. I love making things which improve people's lives. And one of the things I've always dreamt of since I was at university was this idea of something that could tell you at any moment what's going on around you.
I think it's a man jumping in the air doing a trick on a skateboard.
I teamed up with like-minded engineers to make an app which lets you know who and what is around you. It's based on top of the Microsoft Intelligence APIs, which makes it so much easier to make this kind of thing. The app runs on smartphones, but also on the Pivot Head smart glasses. When you're talking to a bigger group, sometimes you can talk and there's no response, and you think, is everyone listening really well, or are they half asleep? And you never know.
I see two faces, 40-year-old man with a beard looking surprised, 20-year-old woman looking happy.
The app can describe the general age and gender of the people around me and what their emotions are, which is incredible. One of the things that's most useful about the app is the ability to read out text.
Hello, good afternoon. Here's your menu.
Great, thank you. I can use the app on my phone to take a picture of the menu, and it's going to guide me on how to take that correct photo.
Move camera to the bottom right and away from the document.
And then it'll recognize the text. Read me the headings.
I see appetizers, salads, paninis, pizzas, pastas.
Hi. Years ago, this was science fiction. I never thought it would be something that you could actually do, but artificial intelligence is improving at an ever faster rate, and I'm really excited to see where we can take this. As engineers, we're always standing on the shoulders of giants, building on top of what went before. And in this case, we've taken years of research from Microsoft Research to pull this off.
I think it's a young girl throwing an orange frisbee in the park.
For me, it's about taking that far-off dream and building it one step at a time. I think this is just the beginning.
Okay, so that's a really nice example of looking at how AI can be developed to help. And the whole idea of our AI for good is that we look at this technology and we look at society and people in society and the environment and all of those things, and we think, how can the technology actually help? Okay, and with the Imagine Cup, we're not expecting you to build this technology for us and hand it over and go, here's the tech I built. What we want you to do is imagine, we want you to create, we want you to be able to back it up with some, this is how we would do it, but you don't actually have to do it, okay? And we will delve into this as each week goes and break down kind of how it will be marked and stuff like that. But what's important to point out is behind that, you would have seen Sachi there as an engineer and is programming. One of the most common programming languages for AI is Python. And if you don't have to program for Imagine Cup, but if you did want to learn some basics of Python, we actually are running a whole webinar series on that. We did our first one on the 21st of April, but if you want to join in, you can watch back on that one, and you can join us at DSHomeSpace with the web link down below there for the next few. If you did want to learn some of the programming that is behind some of this stuff. But as I said, for the Imagine Cup itself, you don't need to be able to program, and you don't need to program this for us. What you're going to be doing, and I suppose for today and before we pick up on our next episode on this, what we want you to do is just start thinking about those AI for good pillars. There's 4. There's AI for Earth, there's AI for cultural heritage, AI for accessibility, and AI for humanitarian action. Now, I would be here for another 15 minutes to explain each one. So what I would advise is that you go to the website as a bit of research on this, and I have that on the next slide, and that you actually see what each of these are about roughly, so that you can start then thinking, right, where would my project lie? Okay, how it will be marked, roughly breaking it down, is we would have 20% for innovation. So that's just coming up with a new idea, something that hasn't really been done yet, or an area of something that really hasn't been explored a lot. Buildability is not that we want you to build it, but that we want to be able to look at it and go, that could work, that you could do that. So we don't want it to be something impossible. Okay. Impact. So who is this going to impact, and how impactful would it be? And then obviously we will be looking at the ethics, so making sure that everything's done right. And again, we're going to have a whole other episode around all of this stuff, so don't worry about all this too much. And then finally will be just how you present it. Now, remember the deadline is due June 12th, isn't it, Corey?
Yep.
Yeah,
it is.
So you know, we have a lot of time, and we have loads of episodes on Imagine Cup Junior to that point that you're going to learn and improve and help inform you with all of these areas. But for today, what we want you to take away is to go off and look at those pillars, and we'll pop the web link again into the announcements. It's aka.ms/AI for good. Okay, so aka.ms/AI for good. So if you go to that website, you can go and research those pillars, see what they're about. And then after you've researched them, just write a list. What we want you to do is think of as many ideas as possible. We don't want you to just think, oh, I need to think of one idea right now. The best thing you can do is think of as many ideas as possible. And then as the weeks go on, you'll be able to narrow it down into what I could actually build a project on. Isn't that the best way to do it, Corey? That's how we approach a lot of things, isn't it?
Definitely.
So brainstorm, basically. Write down, after you've researched the 4 pillars, write down as many different project titles on AI for good as possible. And then as the weeks go on, or even as of next week, hopefully you'll start to frame which one of those ideas might be actually really, really useful for you. Okay? So take a breath. We've done a lot there, and we will continue to do a lot because we want to make sure you do have enough knowledge to build out these amazing projects. So hopefully by now we understand that looking at all the technologies and examples we did, that this interaction of data, algorithms and machine learning all together will actually really, really help how the AI performs and works. And we will, as Corey said, delve into each of these individually as we go over the weeks as well, so that you get more and more understanding each week. Today was all about the basics, as Corey said, the fundamentals. So we might look at some questions, Corey. I think there's definitely one anyway, or I don't know if there's two because I've been chatting here. So do you want to walk through some questions?
Yeah, no, there's a really good question, something that I actually never considered before. Are the use of cookies on websites similar to what we're talking about? So, you know, when you go into a website and it's saying allow cookies. Yeah. So what they are, they're a little bit different. Okay, so they are not generally intelligent, so they don't have intelligence behind them. They're more kind of data that's been left behind on a browser for another system to track that recent activity. So it's a file that's usually downloaded behind the scenes of your computer, and it's there to track any related activity that goes on.
Okay.
But it's a really good question, because actually it made me think. I was like,
yeah, that's a really good one. Okay, great stuff. Okay, guys, so last thing we will say is if you want to do some more reading, we're just kind of skimming the surface of some of these things. So if you want to do some more reading on all of those things we did today, at this website, we have aka.ms/HomeSpace Imagine. We have a collection of resources that we'll add to every week, including student guides. And these student guides really delve and dive into this content a lot more detail than we did, in a lot more detail. So if you want to do more reading, if you find this stuff as fascinating as I do and Corey does, there's lots that you can read there and upskill your knowledge on, and that no doubt will help you understand it a lot more and therefore help your project a lot more too. So kind of additional reading materials are up there on the site. Video will also be live for you by Monday, so that you can watch back, or if you're working with someone else on another team, they can watch it and catch up so that you can do your project together. And we will keep you updated on all those things as well. But until then, we'll chat to you on our next Imagine Cup episode. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great weekend. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.